Hi, this is my little Royal Enfield Clipper. I say Clipper, it's stroke Crusader, because I believe the Clipper did actually morph into the Crusader towards the end of the production. Now the problem I had with this machine was a slipping kickstart. When it reached the compression stroke, it just slipped and would not turn the engine over. So investigation started, and I thought, well, it must be something to do with the clutch. So after draining the oil, I removed the primary chain cover, and then I proceeded to remove the clutch one plate at a time, putting them in order so as we could put them back in reverse order, so as not to make any errors. And when I got to the last piece, which is this, what we call, I suppose, the flywheel, which fits on to the shaft as such. Now you should need a puller to remove this, as it's on a taper and also got a woodruff key, and it can be quite tight. Now I managed to remove it with a couple of screwdrivers behind it, just to give it a bit of a waggle, and it popped off. Now that told me something pretty well immediately. I should have mentioned earlier that the nut holding this plate on was not as tight as it ought to have been, and obviously that's what initiated the crisis in the first place. If you get this slightly loose on the shaft, you're going to shear the woodruff key without doubt. So right, we get that off, and what I actually found was that's exactly what happened. The woodruff key had sheared in half, with one piece left in the shaft and the other piece in the flywheel. Here's the woodruff key, two halves. So I was really relieved to actually find something positive. That is obviously the problem. Right, so we're going to get this bike back together and working, hopefully. First thing we need is a new woodruff key, which I managed to get from Hitchcock's of Solihull. Very helpful. I do recommend them for any old Enfield stuff. If we look at the shaft, we'll see it's a little bit scored, which you would expect after the fact that the flywheel has been spinning on it. Now I've got some cutting paste that you use to lap valves in. Using the fine paste, just stick a bit either side of the shaft, put the bike in gear so as the shaft doesn't turn, then put your flywheel on and spin it around, and you will actually hear the cutting paste doing its work. Pull it off, clean the shaft up, clean the flywheel up, and then do this procedure quite a few times until you get a nice smooth finish on here, and also you can feel there's a nice snug fit on that shaft. You will need that snug fit to make sure you have a successful job. Right, I thought I'd just lay the clutch plate assembly out for us to have a quick look at, remembering that there's already a friction plate built into the clutch cage, which is now on the bike. So working from the inside out, our next plate to fit would be the steel, friction, and then of course there's the outer pressure plate itself. I've also bought this upgraded spring kit for the Crusader. The 6 springs, 3 have got green paint on, 3 are plain. The plain ones are the slightly stronger of the 6, so what we do, we fit them alternatively. Green, plain, and so on. And this should give us nice even pressure on the clutch assembly, and hopefully give the clutch a lot more bite. Right, we've got the hub back on, and it's a nice tight fit. Using that fine paste seems to have done the job. I'm now going to put it back together, and I'm using a new anti-shake washer, which is already on, and the nut, which I've just started. It's finger tight. Right, now I'm sure there is a special tool for holding this hub to allow you to tighten and untighten the nut. I haven't got one, but what I have done, I've actually made one. Here we are. I call it the tennis racket, but it actually works really well. Nice snug fit on there. We've got a hole for the socket to go through. Snip that up. And I'll just finish it off with a larger bar. Ditto. Right, I think that should do it. That should not come undone again. Next step is the clutch cage, making sure you've got the primary chain slacked right off. You can probably see there's some ball bearings. They are built into the cage, and I have actually put some oil on those so as they're not dry when it first starts up. We'll push that back onto the hub, and that is retained by a large circlip. Which hopefully I will get on in one go. You will hear it click when it's home. There it goes. Right, now we can start assembling the clutch. Right, we can now get on with reassembling the clutch plates. The first plate to go on is this steel plate, and you'll notice that it's beveled in the centre. And it's very important that this goes on the right way, and the right way is the bevel faces you, bevel out. The other plate, the other steel plate involved, is a flat one, and it can go on either way around. So this is the first one, the beveled one, as I say, must face out. The other thing is you never fit a wet clutch dry, so these have all been soaked in oil before assembly, including the friction plates. So I'll now proceed to put them on, and we will catch up later. Clutch plates in, but before we put the final outer pressure plate on, we must remember the plunger goes in the middle. Then we've got this little spacer, and finally the pressure plate. I've now got to assemble the 6-spring cluster, remembering the alternative green plain. It's a bit fiddly, so we'll catch up later. Spring assembly now back together. The way to do this, by the way, is to put your 3 stronger springs on the outer plate, 3 weaker springs on the studs sticking out from the clutch side, and just push it in hard and try and get your bolts in. It's a bit fiddly, but it's not too bad. The heads of my bolts have been drilled, so it means I can wire them up, which I will later. Yours may not be drilled, in which case just nip them up and hope for the best. We've now got to readjust the tensioner on the timing chain, on the primary chain, so we'll just get that right. There we are, lovely. I'll nip the lock nut up in a moment. I'll wire these up, and that should be job done. I'll just try the clutch now. You may be able to see the movement on the plate coming out. It's very slight from your angle, but it feels really nice and it looks to be working okay. So hopefully now it's just a matter of putting the cover back on with a new gasket and some sealer. Put the oil in and we should be okay. Right, so we've reached the end, and it's all back together. This is the primary case. So let's give it a kick and see does it start. is you've got to get it on top dead centre and then kick it. Otherwise you're pushing against the compression and it will slip. So you've got to get it top dead centre and then kick. So I hope you enjoyed the video and you found it